Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Echo Hindoyang. I'm the CEO of MSQ Ventures. I'm very honored to host this world-class panel in this special way. Currently, I'm speaking from my home at New Jersey. And so let's welcome our distinguished speakers. First, welcome Jonathan Wan, the Executive VP and the Head of BD at Zai Lab.
Thank you very much, Echo. It's great to be on this panel. Thank you for the invitation. So my name is Jonathan. I've been the head of business development at Zai since the inception of the company. So primarily responsible for all the partnering, licensing efforts. Prior to this, I was an investor at OrbiMed, responsible for investing private equity in China. I started my career at Goldman Sachs in the Boston Consulting Group. Again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Next, welcome Konstantin Buklov, the Managing Director at the Perceptive Advisors and the Executive Chairman at the LianBio.
Thanks, Echo. Pleasure to be here with you guys. And looks like we're going to have a great panel based on the quality of the guests and the quality of the moderator. My name is Konstantin. As Echo mentioned, I work at Perceptive. Perceptive is a leading life science fund here in the US. I'm also the chairman of LianBio, a company that Perceptive has founded and built over the past several years. Excited to be here.
Thank you, Konstantin. Next is Dr. Mu, the CEO of Zynas and also former founder of Overland.
Thank you, Echo. It's a great honor to be joining this great panel. My name is Hua Mu. I'm currently the president, CEO, and acting CMO at Zynas Biopharma, cross-border biopharmaceutical company. Prior to that, I was co-founder and interim CEO and CMO at Overland Pharmaceutical Company, also serving as a venture partner at Hill House Capital. Prior to that, I work with several China-based biopharmaceutical companies. Prior to that, I worked in US. Overall, I had more than 20 years pharmaceutical industry experience, and a little more than half of that was in US and Japan, and close to half was in China. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Dr. Hua. Thanks everyone to join me today. So everyone can see our panelists are the hottest in the world now. Actually, they are not only have so much experience, just recently in the first half of this year, our panelists contribute almost 25% of the all licensed deals focused in China. And so today we are going to review the secrets behind these hottest deals and also learn their precious experience of global collaboration. And first, actually, this is the most debating question from the biopharma executives is still why now? And so because of the challenges they observe in China, the government control price and the clinical trial. And so they ask us, why should we start the global collaboration now? And as you are the pioneer of the global collaboration, Zai Lab started 9 years ago and have been the most successful top biopharma company by using this licensing deal structure. And also, Konstantin, the Perceptive have been announced the LianBio last year. Actually, even the pandemic did not delay the new company's launch. And Dr. Mu and have very productive year last year and co-founded Overland and built 2 joint ventures. And this year you started another cross-border focused company. So I think let's start with the big brother, Jonathan, have been in this sector for 9 years cross-border and have been collaborate with a lot of companies. Now you already have 3 commercialized products in China and 22 assets in pipeline.
Yeah, so our BD strategy have evolved. I think since the inception of the company, You know, a lot of it to do with, you know, sort of the growth of the company, but also a big part is to do with regulatory reforms that has undertaken place in China, you know, especially over the last 3 to 5 years. You know, reforms such like, you know, China joining the ICH, and so we can do global trials much earlier, you know, and you know, at that global standard. So that is certainly very attractive for Western companies as they want to, you know, accelerate the timeline of their products globally, not only in China but globally, by having Chinese patients contributing to those trials. You know, especially in areas like, you know, gastric cancer, for example. We have an asset called bemarituzumab, which, you know, we partnered with 5' originally, and now we partner with Amgen through the Amgen 5' acquisition. So gastric cancer in China is about 30 times the amount of patients that there are annually in the United States. So, you know, we made a huge contribution to the, you know, Fight 144 trial that 5' you know, did, which sort of led to the acquisition by Amgen. And you know, we have many of these type of examples. So I think that is one of the key reasons. Another key reason is the market in China is becoming bigger and bigger. It's already the second largest market in the world. You know, we have about 4 million annual incidents of oncology patients, you know, every year here in China. So, you know, that commercial market, you know, is becoming quite attractive, you know, for large and small companies. I mean, if you look at the multinationals that do well in China, such as AstraZeneca's and the Pfizer's of the world, the contribution to their global revenue is becoming more and more important. You know, for AstraZeneca, it's about 25% of their global sales. So it's a significant market as well. And so, you know, if you're a Western company, as you think about how to get into this market, you know, it's you know, although it's attractive, but it's also has its own, you know, challenges and complexities, given the market is at its still, you know, formative stages. So, you know, I think working with a, you know, trustworthy partner is important to help you navigate, you know, through the challenges, and especially if your objective is to really accelerate the global timeline. Then it is even more important to find a trustworthy partner that can produce data at the global speed, at the global standards. So maybe I'll stop there and you know, let you know, my fellow panelists to you know, to hear their points as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, Konstantin, actually, last year you launched the Lianbio, and then in just a short, not even in 1 year, you already licensed in 8 assets in the different indications for China market. So, why do you take the action now, even during the pandemic?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get this question a lot. Why now? And I usually answer this question with a question. I ask, why not now? Right? Because, you know, fundamentally, I think Jonathan covered a lot of these very important points, but it's the right time to take advantage of opening up a different part of the world for clinical development strategies through partnerships in China, right? I think to Jonathan's point, it's an attractive market, but there are differences, right? And for a lot of US focused and European focused biotech companies, it's just not possible for them to go at it alone, right? I mean, they're doing work that's hard enough in their local geographies, right? And to really tackle a geography like China, I think becomes a task that would require too many resources and too much headcount and really specific infrastructure on the ground. So absence of going at it alone, I think partnership becomes an important strategy for these companies. And I think companies are continuing to look at the opportunity, and, you know, as Zai grows, right, and other companies grow in their licensing capability and ability and proven ability to execute on the ground, that potential opportunity begins to really materialize for these companies. And they understand that by really thinking about China strategically and plugging it into your global development strategy, you can really accelerate your programs and at the same time gain a foothold in a completely new end market that otherwise would be unavailable to you, right? A very common answer that I hear to the question of why not is, well, what if we're going to get bought? And if we license out China now, we're not going to get the value, right? And that's just fundamentally not true, right? I think you've seen this with the deals that Leanne has done, the deals that Thai has done, the deals that Everest has done, right? If you don't have a partnership in China and you don't create value in China, you're not going to get value for something that you potentially could do in the future, right? But if you do have a great partner like Thai or Leanne or any other platform out there of quality, right? That partnership has to be valued, and that work that's done in the time frame of the partnership will be valued by any potential acquirer of the company. But yeah, I think Jonathan said it well. I think the opportunity has grown; it's becoming more tangible, and companies in the U.S. and Europe are really beginning to be much more thoughtful and sophisticated about how to plug into the Asian markets.
I totally agree. I think even just for the patients, if the treatment works, it should be accessed by all the patients in the world. And thanks for that. And Dr. Mu, and I think you have you kind of like the scientist moved back to China a decade ago, actually is ahead of this trend. And then you decades experience here in US, and so you really cover both sides in terms of the medical field. And also last year you started to build the cross-border company overnight, and then this year Zanus. So why do you take the action last year, not early or not later?
Good question. Thanks, Echo. Yeah, as you mentioned, I returned to China from US from Genentech 11 years ago to build and lead entire clinical and regulatory organization at Hutchinson Pharma, one of the earliest biopharmaceutical company in China. But that was 11 years ago. That time, the environment was very different. And it was very difficult to pursue global collaboration that time. Although we still managed to did the very first out licensing deal with a multinational company in 2011. That was the very first one in China's history. It was CMET. It was a deal for global co-development and commercialization on small molecule anti-cancer drug. Since then, 11 years passed, and there have been tremendous improvements, over the world, changes over the world. Most importantly, there have been tremendous improvement in the entire ecosystem of biopharmaceutical industry, and particularly drug R&D. Most notably, other panel speakers mentioned about the huge improvement in the drug regulatory system and the investment and the capital markets, R&D talent pool, the clinical research resources, reimbursement systems, and many other areas. So as we know, pharmaceutical industry is a highly regulated industry, and R&D is a multi-year long process. It is, at a higher level of risks and uncertainties, and requiring large amount of investment, and also cross-functional and even cross-company collaborative efforts. So it's a systematic, project to develop a new drug, and to pursue effective global collaboration can mobilize all of the relevant resource and effectively mitigate the associated risks. You mentioned about Overland Pharmaceutical, which I was one of the co-founders, and later we were going to talk more about Overland. But on the other hand, my current company, Zenas Biopharma, is a unique cross-border company. So we set up this company at the day one as a truly cross-border. It's a two-way cross-border. Initially, China, US, biopharmaceutical company focusing on development and delivery of immune-based innovative therapies for patients over the world. So our thinking is we aim to effectively leverage the strong complementarity and the synergy between China and the US to more effectively develop and deliver new drugs to benefit patients over the world. So overall, I think, due to the tremendous change and the tremendously improvement in the entire ecosystem in China, right now is the right time and exciting time to pursue broader global collaborations in the pharmaceutical industry and R&D, drug R&D area in particular.
Thanks. I think all the panelists agree that actually China is already established the infrastructure to welcome the Western biopharma or any biopharma in the world with the innovative treatment to treat the patients there. But the question is, why are you ready for that, right? Are you ready have such a mindset and with the high quality assets? So I think the next question is, I think in the past, when you do the cross-border collaboration, what are the unexpected challenges that you are facing? And since the 2017, the government has hold the national contract negotiations for the high price innovative drugs. I think, Jonathan, you can share with us, since you already have the 3 commercialized drugs in China, how do you do with this challenge? And as a public company, your goal is still how to make a profit. But on the other hand, actually, China government tried to make all the drugs available to more the patients. How can you balance?
So look, I think first of all, the Chinese market is a very large and diverse market. We have something like 31 provinces, so it's like 31 European countries. So there's complexity here, and that is one of the things sort of addressing to your first questions. You really need to develop a lot of local expertise, both on the development side as well as on the commercial side, to make it successful. Now, on the NRDL topic, you sort of raise a specific question. I think, first of all, the government has made very positive, very dramatic, NRDL reforms, over the last 3 years. Because before 2017, the national reimbursement list is only updated like sort of on an ad hoc basis, and updated sort of 8 or 9 years since the previous one before 2017. But since 2017, we've had updates every single year, and basically, if you get a new drug approved, you are essentially eligible to get onto the NRDL the year after. What that means is that the ramp up to get to your peak sale is dramatically faster. And given that 95% of the population in China is eligible for NRDL, you're going to have a pretty high penetration from very early on. So I think that is very meaningful, very big. And then in terms of the pricing, look, I think obviously it's not a high price market like the United States. But I think, depending on the level of competition, for that drug class, for the indications, the price is not too bad. I mean, there are many products oncology-wise that is getting reimbursed, in this sort of $3,000 to $5,000 per month. So I think some of the pricing is similar to, some of these European markets. And then you sort of compound that with the fact that, China has by far the largest, sort of patient population as a single country in the world for many of these indications. The volume, far out, sort of makes up for, perhaps the sort of, pricing gap. So look, I think, it's going to continue to evolve. I think that the government is, really want to push for innovation, want to bring effective therapies to the patients. I think that is most important. And that is fundamentally going to continue to drive change in this market. There's been a lot of positive change, and I think you're going to see more reforms, or we expect to see more reforms as the government trying to address the fundamental issues here. Yeah.
Do you forecast the price in China well, more like a US market driver?
Yeah, look, again, I don't think, China is a price, I don't think you're going to see sort of Solaris-like prices, happening in China, in sort of the near future. But, on the one hand, there's actually a pretty large self-pay market. We have one of our product, for example, Optune, the tumor treating field, that we primarily use self-pay together with commercial insurance, provincial reimbursements, and that is doing extremely well. So there is a pretty significant population that are, perhaps a little bit more affluent, and that can afford these self-pay prices. And then, on reimbursement, I think, the key is differentiation. I think, if you have sort of very similar type of products and it's very competitive, then you're probably more likely to be under pricing pressure. Whereas if you really truly have first in class, best in class, well-differentiated products, then perhaps there is more, room to negotiate on the pricing. It's certainly a very dynamic market, and differentiation certainly is important.
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, recently, the tier 1 cities announced the local insurance covers their high price drugs and also rare disease. I think that can be a good news for the innovative drug developers. So Perceptive is one of the most active investors in life science. And last year actually have been the second fund invest most of deals in US and Europe. So Konstantin, as the West top investors now, you are leading their cross-border and focus in China by like an innovative drug developer. So what's the challenges you're facing?
Oh, plenty. I mean, I think we work in a very hard industry generally, independent of whether it's in China, US, or Europe, right? I mean, this is the most regulated industry for innovative products, right? So, and unfortunately, the drugs don't always read the same textbooks that we do, right? And there's just overall challenge in development, and we are trying to kind of bring new science to the forefront, right? But I do think that the challenges are in the large context are global to the industry, and then specific to the geography that you're really operating in, right? From a point of view of building Lian, I think we face a lot of the same challenges that other companies face when they start businesses in China, right? I think talent continues to be, a huge kind of focus point for everybody, right? You have so many companies starting up, so much opportunity, such a dynamic market, finding really great people, and pairing them with really excellent assets to move forward into the industry, whether in development or commercial, I think continues to be one of the most important variables to focus on. Other than that, I'll be very honest with you. I think China has done a fantastic job of actually readying the market for the reforms that are coming, right? We haven't seen too many surprises. Even this topic of reimbursement and NRDL, I mean, all of this is actually very positive, right? I think the government shares the mandate that we all are trying to pursue, which is delivering innovative medicines to patients. But I think Jonathan said it well, that the reimbursement process actually allows for competition. And when you do have competition around a specific target with a specific molecule, and there's many players trying to pursue that molecule, yes, pricing is going to be eroded, and it should be. I mean, that is a market-driven effect, right? But if you are pursuing innovative assets, best-in-class, first-in-class assets, I think there's a very, very viable end market in China for global companies.
Thanks for that. So Konstantin, just another question is, as an investor, actually is totally different mindset. So why did the Perceptive advisors decide to start the Lian Bio?
Yeah, I think we were very passionate around the dynamics that were occurring in China in 2016, 17, and beyond. We certainly were, as a fund, looking for more exposure to Asia generally, and we've gained that exposure through deploying our kind of classic strategy of being passive investors in companies, right? Both in the US and Europe and as well as Asia. And that's been great for us because obviously the market's performed extremely well. But we also found ourselves in a very unique spot in the ecosystem where we have a lot of relationships and a lot of access to innovative science, and we see a lot of innovative science. Perceptive as a fund sees about 400 companies a year, right? Companies that are developing drugs all over the world, and they're looking for financing to continue to develop those drugs. And having that sort of access and pairing that with a very kind of macro dynamic of what was occurring in Asia made a lot of sense to us, right? As a strategy, company formation is something that Perceptive wanted to pursue, and forming companies in the US, as we have done with our venture platform, and then moving and forming companies in China certainly aligned with the overall strategy of the platform, right? So although we are investors, we're also company builders, right? And I think that in the lens of Leanne specifically, we certainly try to wear that hat, right? Of really trying to stand up a company that could be additive to the entirety of the ecosystem of life sciences in China, and really kind of, continue to bring innovation to patients that need it geographically.
Yeah, we can definitely see actually you and your team maximize their advantage as an investor, and in the past just year and 8 license deal already announced. Congratulations on that. So Dr. Mu, when you build the over 9 ADCT joint venture, which require different structure, the most of popular like licensing model. So the common view of the joint venture is actually too complicated, right? So, however, the ADCT's Lanco already filed IND after 4 months of joint venture formed. I think that is just easy to see the achievement, but can you share what's the challenge behind it? How did you and your team to handle it?
Thanks, Echo. Actually, the ADCT overland joint venture was not the very first JV I worked on. Previously, I worked on 3 or 4 JVs from Hutchinson, Medipharma, WuXi Apotek, and Simcere. So I went through multiple JVs. But as you know, as any business model, JV has its pros as well as cons. Okay, so the big advantage is with the JV structure, we can effectively link both sides' strengths together for a really long-term strategic partnership. And also, particularly for those innovative medicine, we need technical expertise. Normally, the foreign parties have those experience and technical capability, and the Chinese party may be lacking. So it's a truly a win-win situation if we handle JV appropriately. It can really leverage both sides' strengths and resources. It particularly works well for those emerging and highly innovative area, for example, ADC area. On the other hand, it also has challenges. For example, because it's mainly on the operational side, because for most times the decision will be up to both sides. It will be a joint decision, so the governance will be more complicated, and so we needed to have a better or effective communication between the 2 parties or multiple parties, and also to realistically set the goal and move as quickly as possible. But overall, I think the most important is to have the strategic, common goals from both sides, and working closely and collectively with each other. And particularly in the this new era of in context of COVID-19 pandemic, it created a lot of challenges on operations. So for example, people cannot meet in person. So how to increase mutual understanding, communication efficiency. So those are the new challenges. But overall, if both parties have set the realistic and common strategic goals and have the intention to work as a truly strategic partners, I think all the challenges can be resolved.
I think that's well said. I can still remember last year when to your teams in the negotiation, I can see actually the determined to create such a joint venture, two teams. I still remember in the 3 months, every day we back and forth to structure it, but we can see the Hill House, Overland, and also ADCT, both the executive teams are very willing to negotiate and compromise. But the goal is really, how can we transfer this technology to China as soon as possible? I think the mindset, the common goal is the most important thing. Thank you for that sharing. So actually, the next question is, recently the Western biopharma executives come to ask me and curious to learn how to benefit from the China capital market high valuation. So we kind of did a summary last year. There are almost 49 IPO is China focused biopharma IPO'd successfully. Only 2 of them in US, and 47 are in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and the valuation comparing actually is definitely higher than US. And this year, it seems the trend is kind of like a change now. And so far, we have the 17 IPOs successfully launched, and 5 already on the last start compared to last year is more. So Zai Lab is a very successful example to do list in Nasdaq and then Hong Kong. And so, Jonathan, can you share some of the insights about that?
Yeah, look, I think there's certainly that there's a lot of capital that's attracted to the Chinese biopharmaceutical industry, both on the private side as well as on the public side. And I think as we've just been very privileged and honored to have world-class investors both on both sides of the Pacific. That's currently on our shareholder base. And look, I think Nasdaq or Hong Kong or even A shares today, there's obviously pros and cons for each of the markets, but I think ultimately quality investors is most important. And then really to your question, I think capital markets is really just a means to hopefully the ultimate goal of the company is to build a very successful company that can bring good therapies to patients. I think the IPO is really just the starting point to build a great company. I think you certainly don't want to be a company that's listed on Hong Kong and there's very limited liquidity, because there can be those type of issues as well, for certain companies, right? So I think ultimately it's about the quality of the company, the quality of the management team, the pipeline. And then if you have those elements, it doesn't really matter what stock exchange you list on, because you're going to be able to attract good investors. You're going to be able to continue to raise follow-ons, and you're going to have the liquidity, which is going to keep everyone happy. But certainly today, Hong Kong is definitely, it's been a very successful 2-3 years for the Hong Kong market to have this biotech chapter, and certainly creates additional avenue to raise capital for all of these, Chinese companies.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the best companies, first focus on their business and delivering drugs to patients, and they know that if they do that well, the market caps will follow. And I agree, and then you have to really think about just efficiency of funding, that development path, and where can you find the most efficient capital and the highest quality of capital. And I think that's a different answer for a lot of different companies. For some companies, Hong Kong might be great, right? And for others, maybe NASDAQ it has certain advantages. So I think it's each situation specific. But if you look at the case of Zai, I think this is a great example. They were able to build a phenomenal investor base in the US, right? And then go ahead and replicate, as high of a quality investor base across Asia. And now they have two very large pools of capital that they can potentially access to continue to license and develop drugs, right? So in my eyes, as I look at kind of the evolution of both the NASDAQ and the Hong Kong biotech markets, I really got to give a lot of credit to the Thai team for being patient, really kind of establishing and growing the quality of their investor base and then moving forward into Asia.
I agree with both of them. In the future, we're going to see more and more China-based companies choose, for example, dual listing in both US and Hong Kong, or even mainland China.
That's great. Thank you for that sharing. So Konstantin, actually, there's a hot topic. I think it's become like fading now, but it's still hot in the SPAC. I know, like, I think the Perceptive actually sponsored for the SPACs focus on the life science and are very successful. So what do you see the company can leverage SPAC as a more secured way to go to IPO?
Yeah, SPACs are a very interesting instrument. Perceptive was the first fund to ever put up a life science SPAC. ARIA1 was the first SPAC focused on life sciences, which was a great experiment. And I'll tell you that, when the team really built the ARIA platform, funding capital for ARIA1 was far, far harder than finding capital for ARIA4, right? And now we're kind of the fourth iteration, and we've just completed our third D-SPAC, right? Which has been great. I think it's a very valid tool and platform for certain companies to get public, but it's not just a replacement of the IPO process, right? I think it's situation specific and company specific. Companies that require a significant amount of capital, companies that have some intrinsic platform value and a large scalable pipeline that they're moving in parallel. I think accessing that capital through a SPAC structure makes a lot of sense, right? For other companies that are in the beginning of their growth cycle, maybe they're focused on one specific target with one specific molecule, and it's a very interesting area. I think they can find funding and investors to support them in the private and then to a traditional IPO pathway. The pendulum on SPACs has certainly swung all the way and now is coming back a little bit, but we do believe that SPACs will continue to be a valid financial instrument for companies to get public, but it's really, in our opinion, going to distill to the quality of the sponsors that are wielding those SPACs and the quality of the investor of the SPAC itself, right? So I think when target companies are talking to SPACs, I think they're looking at quantity of capital, quality of capital, and quality of the sponsor, because you're intrinsically creating a very close partnership with that sponsor as the company continues to move forward through its life cycle.
Actually, last week on June 2nd, the Social Capital announced 4 SPACs focused on life science one time and targeted to fundraising $800 million in total. Do you think that will be more like a normal way for life science company in US go to public?
No, I don't. Listen, I don't think SPACs are going to replace IPOs, right? I think they're going to be part of the dynamic, certainly, right? But I think there are advantages and there are disadvantages to SPACs depending on the sort of company, right? I also think it's really hard for SPACs to, complete a D-SPAC process because of the kind of the diligence commitment that's required to really finding a target, qualifying that target, diligencing that target. And I wish that all SPACs found great assets and did great deals, but I think that's going to be hard, right? Based on just kind of the sheer number of SPACs and the fact that, there's a fuse that's burning for some of these SPACs. And if they don't find a deal in a certain time frame, they have to give the capital back. We'll have to see how that dynamic plays out and how those transactions are forced. I think that's going to be kind of the next set of data points that are really going to affect the SPAC space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So what do you see, like all the panelists where do you see how China's innovation transform the global collaboration? The BCG kind of like a summary. The China in the past decades have been through their innovation three waves. The first wave was starting in the early 2000s. Like a new generation innovation pharma companies are formed in China, but they only focus on their fast follow or for the me too or the me better drugs. And then beginning around 2016, actually we see more the activity in the original indication expansion and the combo therapies and the novel antibodies. And then actually just in the past few years, we can see actually the new MOA is coming from China, and we observed the last year actually have been the 18 new innovative assets compounds have been licensed out from China. So where do you see such an innovation changes will transfer the global collaboration?
Well, maybe I'll start. Oh, go ahead, Dr.
Go ahead.
Sure, maybe I'll start. Listen, I think that as China continues to grow its life science sector, it's going to impact the world. There's no doubt about that, right? It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, right? And I think we are going to see phenomenal science coming out of China and really informing the global scientific stage in biopharma, right? I do think that for the near term, I think these cross-border opportunities will continue to exist because of all the things that we've been discussing in this panel and how difficult it is for U.S. and European-based biotech companies to really take advantage of a geography that's slightly different in its operation and also just physically so far away. So I think licensing will continue to be a trend, right? And probably will just continue to expand in other therapeutic areas. But I think very soon, and I'm pretty bullish on this, I think we're going to see just really high quality science being developed in China, and that science coming back the other way.
I agree with Konstantin. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that in 2011 at Hutchinson MediPharma, we did the very first our licensing deal of innovative drug, to a multinational company in China's history. In the subsequent 2 years, we did 2 separate deals with other 2 global companies. Since then, there have been a bunch of our licensing deals in China at other Chinese companies. So the overall, as I mentioned, over the past 11 years, I spent the majority of times working in China with those China-based companies. I saw the overall trend that the innovation level in China has been steadily and significantly increased. So we're going to see more and more our licensing deals. So the global collaboration will be really 2 ways, not just 1 way. So at my current company, Zenas Biopharma, we are setting the company to face or to welcome this new trend, the 2-way exchanging trend. So we're currently building organizations both in US and China, so we can effectively handle the 2-way exchange or flow of assets, from US or Europe to China, as well as China to the rest of the world. So we think that's the inevitable trend, and we're going to see more and more such deals or collaborations. The question is, our companies are really ready for this new trend, and we need more companies to handle this.
Thanks thanks Dr. Mu for the summary. And Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
No, I absolutely agree with everything that Konstantin and Dr. Moore said. Look, I think it just happens in stages, and I think this occurred in some of the other markets in the world as well as they evolved. I just think also it's a matter of time because we have the talent and we have the capital, and you're already seeing some of these innovation that's going global from China. So I think sooner or later more is going to come from China for global, and it's probably more likely to come, at least the initial waves, in diseases on areas that are more prevalent in China than some of the other markets. But I think it's just a matter of time.
I want to add one more comment. So, because I'm a drug developer. So in terms of how to embrace this new trend, I think from development perspective, we needed to incorporate or utilize all of the three approaches. Traditionally it's a China for China, then global for China, and then the inevitable next step or approach will be China for global. So we needed to, for a company want to really, take advantage or leverage the global collaborations, we need to think about it to have all those three approaches or complements.
Yeah, so I really like that, China for China, global for China, and the next stage is China for global. I think it is back to the why now question. If why not now, then you may be behind for the game, right? So last, please allow me to ask a spicy question, and also very popular question I got recently from the biopharma executives who are looking for the global collaboration. They ask me, which company should we work with? Zai Lab, Lianbao, Overland, and Zenas. So Laura say, which company we should work with? I think most likely, what's your plan, strategy? Thank you. How about we start with Constantine? I think you left out.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think all these companies are great. All of them should be considered. And I think for I think in any partnership, it takes two to tango, as they say, right? So you got to make sure you find the right partner, right? And in some cases, it might be Zai. In some cases, it might be Dr. Wu. In some cases, it might be the team with Leanne, right? So I think there's a lot of factors that go into answering that question. But I guess what I want to say is that, at times people look at us as competitive companies, but we really are not competitive companies. We're addressing unmet medical needs, and we're trying to deliver drugs to patients, right? This isn't a football match, right? We're not playing against each other. We're actually are tackling a fundamentally important problem that we need to continue to focus on, right? So I always encourage companies that come to Perceptive asking, how should we be thinking about China, right? I always encourage them to first study the different models that have been deployed successfully in China, because doing deals is far easier than developing drugs, right? And you really need to be confident in your partner's ability to execute, right? And once they do the diligence, there's a very natural gravitation to a certain platform, right? That makes a lot of sense. So I think if US and European companies aren't thinking about China today, they're already behind the overall marketplace. And I think when they do think about China, they should consider the entirety of the landscape and all the different models that have been proven to be successful there.
Thank you. Dr. Mu?
Yeah, I agree. Over the past 11 years, I worked with several China-based companies. So based my, experience, the on-site working experience in China, I think there are quite a few potential collaboration partner companies in China for those international foreign biopharmaceutical companies. So although I'm happy or honored to be listed as one of those companies, but I'm sure, and I'm sure all the panel would agree there will be multiple choices. But the key, as Konstantin mentioned, that each of the foreign biopharmaceutical companies need to make do their homework, to do careful evaluation, and to pick the right China partner based on the foreign company's strategic goal and business needs, right? Because each of those Chinese companies has its own advantages. For example, great organization and management team, very strong R&D capability, or very large commercialization scale, or great growth potential and others, right? So on the other hand, each company also has its disadvantages. So the foreign companies need to do their careful evaluation, and based on that, to pick the right partner. Yeah, but the good thing is that right now there are many more choices for foreign companies. So that's one of the reasons why it's the right time and exciting time to do the global collaboration involving Chinese partners, because for foreign companies there are more choices to make.
That's really true. Jonathan.
Yeah, it's I can't agree more. I think it's every collaboration is like a marriage. So you want to be very careful when you get into these relationships. So just like the licensee, we need to do careful due diligence on the product. Even probably more importantly, perhaps, is the licensor. We need to do reverse diligence on the capabilities, on the track record, on many aspects of the partner who they're going to work with so closely to bring this product to the patients around the world. So I think there could be a lot of potential partners. But sometimes there are, culture fits, there are these, diligence facts that's really important. But certainly, I mean, I guess it's unfortunate under COVID that a lot of these, licensors and potential partners can't come to China and visit the companies. But when things get back to normal, I think it'll be good for companies to come and see the operations, see what it's like to be in China, and meet as many companies as possible, to sort of decide who to work with.
And by the way, I also think that in the near future, you'll see a lot of these platforms actually collaborate with each other, right? Which is a very natural dynamic. I mean, if you think about the growth of these pipelines, right, there's going to be overlap and synergy in the science that's just going to make sense, right? So I certainly think that you're going to have a whole other dynamic where you see these licensing platforms begin to create de novo science in China that couldn't possibly be created elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. At Hill House, we often see that China is big enough, so we can allow multiple partnerships even in the same category or same area, because the market is huge, right? There are a lot of potential partners.
Yeah, I think that's is so true. Like this is no competition. Actually, is more the players coming into China. We build a better the ecosystem together. And the second, I think the during the negotiation or dating is more like a dating. You get to know each other. Actually, the real relationship is after you sign the deal and you are going to be like married together. And the next is kind of like the honeymoon, and then you will have the probably difficult time together. So I think that if we can have a chance to work with Lian Bio and Zenas over there and Zai Lab, actually, I have to say that's probably one of the best companies have such a tremendous resource to work together. But I think I remember there's the English old saying, every part always have a lead. So it depends on what you need and what can you offer. They always can find a perfect partner. So thank you so much for all your great insights and the generous sharing. And I think that is really valuable for all the audience and myself as well. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, guys.
And thanks for everyone who joined us. And no matter where you are, we are looking forward to meet you in person. As Jonathan just said, we should meet in person. You should go to China and see the operation. Actually, in the past few years, probably I took hundreds of company CEOs to China. Most of them, after visiting, they just said, I quite love China. That is the next the innovation hub for the global. So we cannot wait for that, everything go back to normal. So we wish everyone have a healthy and happy summer. Thank you.